Hi everyone, I'm Mary from Joyful and Mary Quilting, and today's quilting tip is going to be a little bit different. I'm sharing the spotlight with my husband Terry, Dr. Bologna. He is an emergency room physician and he has experience when it comes to disaster relief. He spoke at our Project Linus conference a while back and talked with the coordinators on how it is that we as quilters, as volunteers, as those who care about our community, can respond in a positive way when it comes to disaster relief. What do we want to do as quilters? We want everybody to have a quilt. Everybody needs a quilt that's going through a difficult time, and we want to provide that quilt. And that's a good thing, but it doesn't always work when we try and do this at a time that's just not quite appropriate in the disaster relief response agenda. So he's going to help us out with that, give us some tips, let us know what we can do and when we can do it. So what is it that we do and how do we do it when it comes to us as quilters?
I think the first thing is, I think, just to understand what happens with donations, because that's really the issue. It's not that the blankets aren't useful or all the other donations aren't useful, but it's just a lot of things just overwhelm the response. In the last 2 to 3 years in particular, there have been kind of record numbers of disasters that have been responded to, billion-dollar disasters each time. And about 70 to 80% of all charitable donations that are voluntarily given occurs within the first 72 hours or so of a disaster or something that's happened. And of that, about 50 to 60% of those items that are donated, again, voluntarily unsolicited donations, I should say, end up not being usable. Or if they're useful items, they end up not being used because of the way they're received or the way that they're sent. Only about 10% of what people think that they need to send for disasters is actually useful for the initial response. And only about 2% of the charitable donations that are received are actually useful for the immediate response.
Oh my gosh, that's
which
not
sounds
a lot.
horrible.
Yeah, it does.
And it's not to say that people don't want to donate or shouldn't donate, but there's a way to do it, and there's
a timeline, right? I mean, we're not following the timeline. I think a lot of times we just get so excited about helping because we know we're quilters. We know what a quilt means to somebody, what it means to us, and we just feel like, I think the response that I get most of the time when I get a question, because I worked with the disaster relief with Project Linus on the national level. And so when something would happen, we would have people just coming out of the woodwork asking us what to do. And what would happen when we would say to them, just wait and we'll let you know, they'd act like we didn't care. And
that's usually the thing. It's everyone has to do it initially. Immediately. And that's why they say in the first 72 hours, that's when all the, especially the volunteer donations, come shooting in. And that's the time when you really aren't going to be able to use a lot of those. There's a designed response, or there's a set response to these disasters, or should be, if it works right. And there are packets that are available for families or for victims. And it's already pre-planned. The blankets are included in that a lot of times. But there's some food and toiletry items, those types of things. And that's what they need initially. The other things, the clothing and the blankets and all these types of things can come later. They've lost homes, they've lost shelters. To give them a bunch of things, toys or whatever else, stuffed animals. Everybody wants one, but they don't have a place to put them, and they don't have a place to take them with them. So that's an issue. And I think, you can look at some of the disasters that have happened over the last few years that we're all familiar with. I mean, whether it's shootings or it's a hurricane or whatever, tornadoes, these natural disasters or man-made disasters. And what happens? There have been, in a shooting a few years ago, there were over 65,000 stuffed animals that were received in the first week and a half. 65,000. I mean, do we have any conception of how much room that takes up? And there's not the people. We really want to help out, but I think that's kind of the scariest part for those who are on the receiving end, because they are overwhelmed with these donations. They're good, kind people. They don't want to say no, we don't want it, but Well, in that particular instance, they had actually they needed an 80,000 some square foot warehouse just to put the donations that were coming in. And it took them over a year and a half to actually find a home for those items. They didn't want to destroy them, they didn't want to not use them, but they also knew they couldn't use them locally. So they ended up taking a lot of those donations, shipping them elsewhere. Children's hospitals, some things went to Haiti, they went to Afghanistan, they went to all sorts of places to try and find another way to repurpose what had been donated to them that they just were overwhelmed with and couldn't use.
Well, you know, sometimes I think we have to really go deep down inside of ourselves and think, why are we doing this? Are we wanting to make them feel better, or does it make us feel better? And of course, it should go hand in hand. It should make the recipient feel better, and then we feel good because of the donation. But we have to be careful that we haven't eliminated them to kind of build ourselves up, I guess.
Well, there's a disconnect there. There's the need to donate, or people want to donate. They want to have something tangible. I mean, they want to feel like this is what I'm sending, and this is how I'd like it to be used. And that's not always going to happen easily.
And people kind of get offended when you say send money, which is really what they need, right? Isn't that what you talk about?
Yeah, and a lot of the people that you think of in these situations, the Red Cross or those types of agencies, they have a network that they've set up. They've got an organization that can distribute these and that can handle this, but they know where to get the items. They know they can usually get them at a more efficient and more reasonable cost, and they can handle that. If you just send them
that water example. Remember the water example?
Oh, they need water, drinking water. They'll send a couple of cases of drinking water to wherever the address they think they can send it to. But to purchase that, to package it, to send it and get it there, as opposed to giving the equal amount in dollars to the organization who already has the supplier and has a distribution process set up, it costs 400, 500 times what it would cost.
I mean, it was unbelievable, the increase in price for that.
In some cases, especially if it goes someplace off the mainland of the U.S., they were saying up to 1,400% increase in the cost to try and get it there and distribute it, as opposed to giving just a portion of that amount of money to the organization, and they can do it so much more efficiently and cost effectively.
So taking it back to quilters, I mean, everybody knows, I think one of the responses we would get when we'd say that they have the packet that has a blanket in it, it's an ugly blanket, it's just it's not for children, it's and it's not.
Probably is,
yeah, it probably isn't. I mean, you know what you get when you get, even when you get on the airplane, what you get. It's comfy and it'll take care of what you have if you're cold, but it's not what we know a quilt needs to be. So that's where everybody gets a little offended, because we want to get our quilts out there. But the issue that we have sometimes is, again, you take a look on the internet, on Facebook pages and people's websites, and there's always somebody that'll say, send them here. Well, we had an incident that happened after 9/11, and it was right afterwards, and again, we didn't know any better. We had not dealt with any of this before. And so we got an address of a hospital that said, oh yes, you can send blankets, not even knowing what the need was going to be. So we put the word out. Well, we're a national organization. So when we put the word out, it went out. And so the blankets started pouring in, to the point that this poor little hospital was like, no, please, no more. Don't send any more. They weren't being nasty about it. They just couldn't do it. They couldn't take it. They had no one to give all these blankets to at the time, because this was the initial, when everything happened. Later, this probably would have been a great idea. But when we did it, we all felt great about it, and we were really happy that we did it. But it just got to the point where it just wasn't helpful anymore. And we can't be offended by that. We have to be okay with that and listen to those that are really, in the zone, telling us what we can do. What have you been doing?
The issues in the Caribbean, in particular, when the hurricanes have come through, there were occasions that cargo planes have been delayed. I mean, disaster relief cargo planes have been delayed up to 24, 48 hours or more, not being able to land at the airport because unsolicited donations had come in. They didn't know what to do with them. They didn't have any place to put them. They were taking up space on the tarmac, runways, hangars, whatever. And they had to clear that out of there so that the actual cargo relief planes could get in. So help is a four-letter word, is one of my
yeah, that's true.
colleagues, some say.
That's true in a lot of cases, right? I mean, it's not just true in disaster relief. Help can sometimes really overwhelm us rather than actually aid us.
So they've already had infrastructure that's been damaged, and they've already limited on supplies. They're limited on places they can supply things or put things to store things, and they're receiving all these things that are unsolicited, that they're not ready for. It not only makes it difficult physically to handle all these items, but you got volunteers and people who are there, part of the disaster relief, that now have to divert their attention to handling all these unsolicited items. So you're taking away from the people that are actually there on the ground to do things that they're expecting to do. and organized to do that have to now divert to take care of the unsolicited side of it.
And this is why we're doing this video, because we know that everybody is so well intentioned. We all are. We all want to help, especially when we see such devastation and everything that's going on. We want to let everybody know that we care for them, we love them, we want to help them, we want to make it all better. We want to do that. But we don't always do it the right way because we don't know any better. And that's where, when Terry gave the presentation at our Project Linus conference, he basically, this was to address the local chapter coordinators and letting them know, this very same information, how they could approach this with those who contacted them and wanted to be of help. And I mean, I'm telling you, we've had some people that have been really upset with us when we tell them not yet. We don't say no, never. We just say not yet, and that we have to follow a timeline, and we don't always have a specific timeline like they do because you've done emergency. I mean, he works in the emergency room. I mean, he knows what it means. There are things that you can do in the emergency room. If he has a child brought in and, a terrible thing has happened and he's taking care of them, the last thing he needs is me coming in there saying, do they need a blanket? Which I would probably do. I would probably do that. Does the family need, do they have siblings? I would want to do that because I know it makes a difference. He's got to take care of them first. He's got to take care of those immediate needs. This is on a very small scale, but it's the same thing is true on a large scale. We have to take care of those immediate needs. No, the blanket that they throw over that child in the emergency room is probably not a beautiful quilt like the ones that are in the cabinet outside, but it's what they need now. And that's kind of what you're saying, is that you can't be offended by this. We just have to work with the system. And I think people are kind of getting the message a little bit, but I know that I've seen people that have said, oh, send them to my house, it's okay. And they've posted it on a national site. I've had people bring stuff to my house. I know what 1,000 blankets look like. I know what 10,000 blankets looks like, and they don't fit in your home.
Not pretty.
No, it's not. It's not pretty. They are beautiful blankets. They're all there, but it's not pretty when you see what you have to do to try and orchestrate their distribution.
It'd be like if you're going to try and have a garage sale, and you say, okay, I'm going to have a garage sale next Saturday, and all your neighbors and relatives start bringing stuff to your house on Tuesday and Wednesday.
And want you to mark it.
Yeah. They're not going to help with it. They just get it to you.
Yeah, and that's it. And now you're stuck, So that's where we just really wanted to bring that to everyone's attention. We feel like it's such an important thing that we as quilters are still allowed and encouraged to provide comfort and security through the gift of a handmade quilt. That is so important to us, and that's what we want to do. But we just want to do it the right way. We don't want to make people upset with us. We don't want to give an undue burden to those who are going through this tragedy or crisis. We don't want to have the person that's experiencing the difficulty dragging along a quilt that they have nowhere to put, or feeling like they can't say no when they're offered all this extra stuff that at that moment it's just not needed.
It really does slow and it hampers the relief effort.
It does.
It's not helpful. It makes a difference too if you've got some place that is ready to accept them and that has a way to distribute them. Sometimes the coordinators or the people in the area you think can distribute them have also been affected by this, so they're not able to physically take care of it. You just got to get the right things, the right time, the right place. I think one of the things that people notice in the disaster settings, people will just go online and they'll find an address. I know in some cases they'll send it to a community center, they'll send it to a library, they'll send it to a school, they'll send it to a government office. And these people have no way to take care of this, and nothing set up to distribute these. And now they've just been inundated with all these supplies that they can't use, or they can use but don't know how to get them to people that can use them. One of the things that is a real difficulty is people will see something on the news and they'll say, oh my gosh, there's been this disaster, what can we do? Pull out a box and the kids bring a couple toys and a stuffed animal, and you throw some shoes in and a blanket or a coat or some clothes or whatever, package them up and ship them off somewhere. And when they get there, now you've got this mishmash of goods that somebody's got to sort through and figure out what's usable and what to do with it. And those are the most difficult, from what I understand, in these areas to deal with, because they can't separate them out and divide them out like that.
Yeah, and there have been occasions when, like I say, I worked with the disaster relief with Project Linus for years and years and years. I got good at it. And what I understood was when a need would be presented to me, like maybe we would have a church that would say, hi, I'm the church in the area, we've got a shelter set up, we need 50 blankets. And so then I would go out to our coordinators and say, I need 50 blankets or quilts. We had blankets because we had Afghans and fleece blankets and all sorts. So we just kind of lumped them into one category. And then I would say, I need 50. And I'd have somebody say, I can send 10, I can send 12, I can send whatever. When I got 50, I'd stop, I'd give them the address, nobody else got it, they would ship them, and then I'd go on to the next one. That's what really worked. What scares me is when I see someone, again, post on Facebook, I'm so-and-so, I've rented a warehouse facility, send your quilts and blankets to me and I'll get them distributed. They have nobody to receive them yet, so they get that. Because you don't realize how many. We've got lots of generous, wonderful quilters who will send you those beautiful handmade blankets that they have worked so hard on, and then you get them and you have nowhere to take them because everybody's doing it. So we have to be focused, and that's where, like Terry said, they know what they're doing, and once you have that connection, you can find reputable agencies that are out there. Project Linus is one. Sleep in Heavenly Peace is another one. I know there's lots more. I just don't.
You can go on Charity Navigator and get an idea of.
There you go, Charity Navigator. You can find out those organizations, and then of course you will see people that have actually publicized that they have a shelter or they have a whatever that is in need. But we contact them directly, find out exactly what they need, and we don't overwhelm them, which is the important part of it. So as we're going through these disasters, and the hurricanes, when it's hurricane season, that's what we see. When it's fire season, we see the forest fires. When it's some kind of a tragedy that's happened, something terrible. And so again, it touches our heartstrings. It makes us want to go and help. We just want to encourage everyone to help, but to help in the right way and not to be offended when your help is not really rejected, but just not ready to be accepted right yet. And to understand that process, that you've seen and that you've gone through when it comes to that disaster, they have priorities and we've got to follow through on those. We are not the experts in this area. We are the ones that are here to volunteer, and volunteers need to kind of do what they're told when it comes to remedying these situations.
Well, and some people are trained to do it and some are not.
Yeah, it's true.
And that's an issue with hurricane relief in particular. Sandy and Katrina really brought a lot of this out. Mm-hmm. Volunteers would show up, a van load of people would show up, or a
good-hearted people who really just wanted to help,
who didn't think about, okay, we're going to go help, but there's already a shortage of shelter, food, and that sort of thing, and things to take care of the people who have been impacted. And now you've got people coming in that themselves are adding to the numbers to need to try and take care of them as well. They have to eat too.
They have to, use the porta potties.
They have to have some place to stay.
They've got to sleep in a shelter of some sort. It's not helpful.
And if they're not trained, there are certain things you can and can't do. It's a fine line there between who's helpful and who's not.
Yeah. And if you want to be a helper, contact your local Red Cross and find out how you can be on that team. You can be trained to do that. There are people who just love that sort of thing and they want to go into the area and help out when they can, and you can be trained to do that. And then you can be one of those people. There are others that have gone, maybe somebody's we had a nurse that traveled and she would go regularly to aid different particular situations, and she'd take 10 blankets with her that she could hand out. She'd done it before. She knew what could be accepted, what wouldn't be overwhelming.
Well, she was part of an organized group.
Exactly. Oh yeah. She was part of them that were actually taken in there. She didn't just show up. So she knew what could be used and what couldn't be used. And that's where we have to trust those people, and we have to be able to just be humble enough to accept what it is they tell us we can and can't do, and not be offended over it, which that's the sad part. Because we have people that will say, okay, forget it, that if I can't send mine within 72 hours, I'm not sending them at all. You don't want my stuff. That is not true. But, we have to, again, be humble enough to accept direction and follow those directions, and then it will work. The system will work the way it's supposed to.
Well, with Katrina and especially with Sandy, the Red Cross and some of these other agencies realized they had to address this. And they were actually, another arm of the organization is to try and look for these people that are seeking donations and things. they'll go out online and they'll look for whether it's Facebook pages or whatever, GoFundMe's, whatever, and say, okay, don't just send this to us. They'll try and contact whoever's trying to organize their own relief effort and go to them and say, okay, this is how what you're doing can help us. Or, you know, if you're having this town-wide garage sale to benefit victims of some area, have the garage sale, take the proceeds, and send the proceeds. Don't send us the items. You know, take the clothing locally, take care of it locally, turn it into cash, and we can use that.
And I know there's going to be those that
there's unfortunately there's
I was just going to say that. Go ahead.
There's plenty of people out there that will do GoFundMe's or whatever else, or put themselves out as some type of an organization, a relief organization, that aren't reputable. We all know that happens.
Just because they have a church name attached to it, or just because they have some kind of a really, you know, feel-good kind of title to their group, doesn't mean they're legit. We have to be careful about that.
And that's where you go to Charity Navigator or those types of things, who have vetted organizations and know what is and isn't acceptable.
There are also going to be those people who have said that they have had bad experiences with reputable agencies. That's going to happen. You know, sorry to say that is going to happen, but we are doing our best to at least advise you and let you know that there are ways that really do work, and hopefully you can figure that out on your own in your own local communities without doing something that might jeopardize that relief effort in those first few days.
Yeah. And I mean, and again, I said something earlier about the disconnect. There's the relief needs, there's physical needs, there's emotional needs, there's safety, and there's, you know, spiritual needs that people have to deal with or can actually use help with. And the donor, on the other hand, they want that personal connection. I know if I send this particular item, that this can be useful. Well, if it can get to the right person, maybe it is, but that's the problem.
Yeah. But you know, in the quilting community, I think we're speaking to quilters mostly here, and you know that is the case. People work very hard to create something personal and something that's going to touch the life of the person that's having the difficulty and give them some joy. And that's what we're talking about. We want to bring joy through the gift of our handmade quilts. We just want to do it in the right way so that it does bring joy and it doesn't bring angst or, you know, oh no, or here comes another box, you know, that kind of thing. We want to make sure that everybody understands. So when you do work through someone who is a reputable representative of that particular disaster or of disaster relief in general that we know has a good ranking, again, Charity Navigator is a great way to look that up, or, you know, if it's in a local area and you are in that area, then you might have a little bit better knowledge when it comes to that. We just don't want things to go to waste. We don't want to overwhelm those that are going through such horrific circumstances. We want to make sure that we do exactly what we intend, which is bring joy to a person in desperate circumstances and help them to feel the love that we can offer to them through this beautiful and wonderful gift that we create truly out of the goodness of our hearts and donate without any expectation of a thank you, any expectation of a, you know, round of applause, but rather just because we know it's the right thing to do, and that's how we can help. You know, how can we help? This is how we can help. We're not always able to do a lot of other things, but this is one way we can help.
Like I said, the blankets, a nice colorful blanket is wonderful, and it's great for, especially for kids. They'd love to have that. Stuffed animals, toys, all those things. But at that immediate moment, and to try and get them there isn't always feasible. And unfortunately, a lot of items like that, clothing, shoes, toys, stuffed animals, end up in a landfill or being destroyed, and they're not used. And that's unfortunate. The people that receive them or that have to dispose of them don't feel good about doing that, but they also know that they don't have the means to. What's
the percentage of those who really want to donate in the first little while and then don't donate again?
The best estimates that I've seen have been somewhere between 70 and 80% of the donations occur within the first 72 hours of the disaster.
See, so if you got 70 to 80% of the people say they want to donate then and then don't donate when it's actually needed, think of how that cuts down on those donations. Let's shift that 70 to 80% a few days or weeks later, and then we can help. You know, then we can make a difference.
Yeah, only about 10% of what is sent in those unsolicited donations are usable or at that point.
That's just a shame.
So it's just, and it's just unfortunate.
Yeah, it really is. Since we're talking about all of these ways that we can help as quilters, we have to throw in, people that are generous don't just donate quilts. They want to donate all kinds of things. And in addition to the quilts, we see, you can tell us about that.
Yeah, we talked about some of the hard goods, the shoes and the clothes and that sort of thing.
You can't use high heels when you are, people will send, didn't you say they sent like high-heeled shoes?
Yeah, the stilettos and designer boots type of thing are sent to these areas, which stilettos don't do a lot when you're trying to climb through rubble.
Yeah,
I've never worn them, but
not a good thing.
But yeah, the stuffed animals and all those we talked about. But people will send medical supplies, or they'll send old medications that they're trying to help. And,
good grief.
You can understand the liability in that, and the usefulness is just not there. Pet supplies are another big item that people will send.
Which they are needed. They need pet supplies,
and there are
right?
there are organizations or there are companies that will organize a disaster relief for certain pets, which are great. But again, don't just send them to whoever. Yeah. The mixed items, I think I talked about, water and food. Anything perishable is not useful for the most part.
We imagine.
Because you can imagine getting it there, getting it shipped there, getting it set somewhere, and usually you're talking about limited resources as far as refrigeration and storage and everything else. You just get tons of spoiling food.
Oh man.
Can
you imagine? How that. Again, we don't want to disparage anyone for their need to donate, because we know that. We all want to. We just want to make sure that we focus it in the right way, because a lot of times we just don't realize we're not being helpful. We think we are. We really think that if I mail this and it gets there in 2 days, it'll still be good and somebody can open the box and eat whatever's in there. But that's not the way it goes, and we don't even realize that can happen. So we just have to be careful.
It's just important to remember, unsolicited donations actually can hinder disaster relief. We want to do something to help, but there are ways to do it that are useful. And some things we think are helpful are not, unfortunately.
And sometimes when you get these directives from organizations, people just, they don't mean me. And so we're just like regular people here. We just want, although you've been involved in the disaster relief, so have I, but as just volunteers. And so we just want you to know that there is a place and a position that you can take when it comes to this kind of aid or help. We want to get you to just think about where the direction needs to be and what it is you can do that will actually be helpful.
And I know that people like to have a specific thing, a specific item they like to donate. Those are available, and some organizations have ways to do that, where you can say specifically, I'm giving this dollar amount and it's going to supply this many meals, or it's going to supply this particular type of shelter. That is out there if you really want to be specific. Those things are available.
Well, the other thing that I just thought of is that there are some organizations, especially large organizations like the Salvation Army and the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and Catholic Charities, have big disaster programs. They're already ready for the next disaster. So you can find out what their protocol is, so that, do you know what disaster your quilt is going to go to? No, but you know it will go to the next one when you donate to them. So you just find out through their organization how they do that, so that if you want to be a part, they've already got all that stuff ready, and they tell you there's layettes that they need, there's supplies that they need, all sorts of things, that if you specifically have something you want to donate, contact those organizations and find out how you can donate them ahead of the disaster, so that when the disaster happens, your materials will go where they need to go. That's just another option.
You always hear about staging areas for hurricanes that are coming or whatever. The staging areas, because those are the items that have already been put together and they're ready to go. And
they're all ready to go, so that those involved can be served immediately with those things that we think are essential, that we know are essential. So anyway, that's just another option.
And even with that preparation, to be able to get into some of those areas, with whether it's because of flooding or whatever else, even if it's pre-staged and preset to go, there are delays getting in sometimes.
So you just have to, we have to be humble, we have to be patient, and we have to just kind of follow the rules, which is really important, because these are tried and true. Now, again, I just have to say, I know there are going to be exceptions to the rules. There are going to be situations. That is not what we're talking about here. We are talking about what we can do to make sure that we don't hinder the disaster relief efforts by our participation. and how we can actually help in a positive way. So I hope that's been helpful to all of you. Thank you so much for listening. Please share this with others who you think may want to get involved as well. We'll never have a shortage of disasters, unfortunately, but we will be able to get better at the way we handle them if we have everybody cooperate, everybody participate, and everyone do what they can in order to make it just as easy as possible for those on the receiving end. So thank you so much for your help. Isn't he amazing? I just love him. Thanks. I'm always trying to be joyful, but I will always be merry. Thank you so much for joining us.